I think that people sometimes come to terms with this is how my life is, this is how it's going to be, and it's not going to change. And I want to tell people that it's not true. That your reality can be what you want it to be. And I think that sometimes it feels like a cliche, dreams do come true, or, you be the change you want to see in the world. It sounds like a cliche, but it's not. It's the reality.
Hi everyone, my name is Christopher Bruce with the Bruce Law Firm, and thank you for tuning in today. I'm here with Luna Medina Wolf and Nina Barella from Helping Moon Counseling in Boca Raton. They're a virtual-based practice serving people in Florida, and they are going to talk to us all about using EMDR therapy to erase difficult trauma. Let's get into it. Can you share, just in common everyday people speak, what is EMDR therapy?
So in simple terms, EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And I know that's a pretty long term, and that's why they made the abbreviation, right, to make us all remember it a little bit better. Really what it does, and I'm going to let Nina share on that as well, because we all have our elevator speech to describe it. I like to just help people understand that through EMDR, we have an opportunity to take our memories and reprocess them. And then through reprocessing them, we're able to reach those maladaptive parts of the memories that got stored in a way that is not really helpful for us. And then we get to reprocess them to be more adaptive, more healthy. So if a child touched a stove when they were really young, and their parent, out of a reaction, not necessarily because they're a bad parent, but they just at the moment got so freaked out. So when the child touched the stove, they told them, "You're so stupid. Why did you do that?" And they got really angry at them for doing that. Instead of just, being there for them, taking care of them, the child may have perceived that situation as, "I'm stupid, I'm not good enough," and they can take that with them to their life with those messages. That's what they're going to learn. Even though the parent didn't mean to impact them that way, right? The intention was like, "Oh my God, I'm so worried about my child." That's what the child received. So that's just in a simple term that I like to give people. There's few other things that I can say about this. I'll let Nina say something, and then I might give you one more example. Go ahead, Nina.
Thank you so much, Luna. And absolutely. So in the simplest terms, EMDR therapy, we can sort of look at the history of it. So Francine Shapiro, when she discovered it, she was taking a walk in the park. She noticed when her eyes darted left and right as she thought about a stressful experience that she was going through, the experience actually got less distressing to her. So at its most basic level, eye movements or bilateral stimulation, so stimulating both sides of our brain, can help reduce the intensity of a traumatic image, as well as the emotional intensity and the physiological intensity. So EMDR in that respect just sort of calms difficult experiences all the way from a traumatic event to even sort of day-to-day anxiety, day-to-day stressors. So it has a wide range. Additionally, EMDR therapy and the bilateral stimulation component can actually enhance positive feelings as well. So it's a twofold that we can utilize in therapy. Not only is it just to address these scary traumatic memories, but we can enhance characteristics that we want strengthened, or resources, or even positive states.
So is this mode of therapy, is this hypnosis? Is this different than the typical talk therapy? I think that's a question I had when I first heard about EMDR and had it explained to me. So I think it could do a lot of good for somebody to shed some light on that.
Of course. No, this is not hypnosis. You're not going into a hypnotic state. You're fully aware. What's beautiful about EMDR is that the component of dual attention. So Nina explained how we use bilateral stimulation, right? We're kind of like activating both sides of the brain in the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere at the same time. And I kind of like to say to people, it's like, how most of our information is actually stored in your subconscious mind, and we don't really have accessibility to that information, right? We're mostly in conscious awareness. With EMDR and the bilateral stimulation, we have this dual awareness, meaning we have this little door that gives us access to what's inside the subconscious, and we are able to access that information while fully being aware. It's actually really important for us to be able to continue through the phase work of EMDR for the client to be in awareness. Yes, they have access to the subconscious, but they're fully aware, they're fully in control. We are like facilitating the process for them, but they're fully in control, and we want them to have that sense of control because that's part of what gives them that empowerment in the process.
Just to continue with what Luna mentioned, that the hypnosis word, I think perhaps just because it is eye movements, people automatically assume that pendulation is related to hypnosis, but it is very important for the client to be very present and very cognizant. So we are paying very close attention to whether or not they're dissociating so that they are present and within their window of tolerance to experience this dual awareness. If you can think of it like an image drawn on a chalkboard, right? And as we introduce the eye movements or the bilateral stimulation, it's like we're going over the chalkboard with an eraser, slowly just erasing the intensity of that drawing, emotionally as well as that physical imagery.
When I first heard about EMDR therapy, it was over lunch, and I had a therapist. I think she's still in practice up in Juno Beach. She was explaining it to me, and I looked at her, and I said, honestly, this is what you do. This sounds like a load of do. I'll say I used a different word. I'm on pretty good terms with her. I am with both of you outside of this stuff, but she said, no, actually, it's not. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. This is like a real thing. But then she kind of explained EMDR kind of as if people can store toxic memories, essentially, like a container in their brain. Like somewhere there's a shelf inside of here, and they may have forgotten about the memory, so to speak, but the toxicity still resides in this rapid eye movement. The mechanics of EMDR that I think we get into a little bit in our talk allows the practitioner to allow them to essentially unlock and kind of open that toxic place, and maybe using Nina's analogy, take an eraser to it through the process. Is that basically what we're talking about here?
First of all, I want to share that when I went to my EMDR training, that was exactly the reason I went. I said to the trainer when everybody was going around sharing, why are you here? I said, well, I heard about this and it sounded too good to be true and kind of like a bunch of BS. So I came to test it myself. That's the person I am. And the trainer said, talk to me at the end of the training. And I was amazed of how helpful it was right there, even in the training, because you get to do a practicum. You get to be a client in a lab setting when you get trained. And for me, I was pregnant with my second child. I was 8 months pregnant as I was going through the training. And there was this very disturbing event that was going on, the diagnosis that I experienced, and I felt very guilty for it. I was kind of feeling really down and really hard on myself. So I targeted that. And literally when I came home that day, my husband said, something is different about you. I don't know what it is, but I can see your energy has been lifted. And I said, I do. I feel so much better. And it was amazing on how just this few hours in practicum with somebody I never met before, right? Without a lot of preparation, already gave me help. So, that's why I become so passionate about it. What this practitioner was trying to say, right, is that we're unlinking negative parts of the memory, or those maladaptively stored parts of the memory. And it could be an image, it could be a sound, it could be whatever it is. For all I care, this mouse of the computer can be linked to something terrible that happened to me without even me knowing it. It's my brain and what it experienced through the five senses can link things to what happened even without them having anything to do with it. It's all about what we felt at that moment, what we saw at that moment. All those things can be linked. And then through EMDR and the rapid eye movement, we're able to unlink those components of the memory from the actual memory. So making it more adaptive, if that makes sense.
It does. And we'll look at this maybe through the lens of somebody in a difficult relationship. I'm a divorce lawyer. That's what I love to talk about. But, you can use any other example. But say for somebody who's in a difficult relationship to where, maybe their significant other has treated them very poorly. Is EMDR a modality of therapy that can help? If so, how does it help these people that might be in one of these abusive relationships with what comes next in their life?
Yeah, absolutely. EMDR can help people who are going through divorce or separating from somebody who has been in a difficult relationship. It can help in so many different ways. One thing that I always like to say is that sometimes you see in a marriage that, or in any type of a relationship, right, when two people are together, is that they pick up on somebody, their partner, as being somebody that reminds them of somebody from their past, right? Even subconsciously. It could be a person that is positive, but it could be, unfortunately, many times somebody that is negative. So if this person was growing up in an abusive home, tolerating something that is abusive from their partner, to their brain may not feel as threatening, right? It may even feel somewhat safe because it's known and it's familiar. So they're not going to have the same alarm going on in their brain about their partner's behavior because their behavior seems normal to them. So if somebody was in an abusive relationship or just a challenging relationship with a partner and they finally made the decision to leave, they may still struggle with feeling of, I'm not good enough, I'm inadequate, right? Like, I'm stupid, how did I do that? It's all my fault. Some of those core belief that either existed there before or developed through the relationship, right? Because many times I like to remind people it's not so much about what happened to us, it's about how we perceived it. So especially if the partner is more manipulative and gaslights you a lot, you may feel like it's all your fault and you're doing something wrong. Through EMDR, you're able, again, access those memories, access the experience, go to the in depth into those core beliefs that you developed about yourself and be able to clean those up. I like to use a very simple analogy with EMDR is like, I wear glasses, right? Right now I have clear shades. But if I had red shades in my glasses and you would ask me, what is the color of this white cable? I may say it's pinkish or red because I have red shades. It's my reality, right? It's not false because it's my reality. That's how I see it through my red shades. Through EMDR, what I'm able to do is actually take off those red shades and go back to the initial state of clear view of what the reality is and get rid of all those false beliefs and unlink those false beliefs or parts of the memory to feel better about myself so I can move forward in my life and my relationship.
For somebody, maybe they've exited a difficult relationship and maybe they haven't been working with you or Nina or one of your many colleagues in the process beforehand, which can be a huge benefit, by the way. Public service announcement, see a therapist, get a good relationship with a great therapist as soon as you think there may even be a reason. It really makes a huge difference. But say somebody who hasn't and they've ended relationship or ended their marriage, they have an array of feelings and ways that past relationship is affecting them. What are the parts of their life or their feelings or maybe insecurities that EMDR is best used to help?
Probably if you're getting out of any type of relationship, right? A breakup, even if it wasn't very traumatic, but just by essence, right? When we lose somebody that was important for us for a certain amount of time, there's a certain level of grief that comes with that. And I think that our nervous system at that point can feel kind of shaky, right? So even if it's just a matter of helping you first find some calm, some grounding, and that's part of what the EMDR process includes. That is a very important part of what we do. In EMDR, we have 8 phases. Collection is the first one, and then phase number 2, it's resource development. And many times we spend resource development is a big part of what we do. We may start with history collection and see that the client is still in a very shaky state. Their nervous system is really shaky, so we may leave history collection for a little bit and just focus on teaching them how to ground a little bit, how to be able to do this, what we call a state change, which is what many different therapists offer you, right? I feel a certain type of way right now. Maybe I'm going to do some deep breathing and I'm going to feel a little better. Or maybe I'm going to do some mindfulness exercise and I'm going to feel a little better. Maybe I'm going to exercise and I'm going to feel a little bit better. So depending on what it is, really EMDR can help you through the different phases that we have to just reach this beginning stage would be to ground, to feel like you're able to have some calmness in your life. And then from that, when we feel like you have enough stability, then we only go into reprocessing actual memories, if that makes sense.
I guess it would kind of help me because I've never actually heard it, but help a lot of people, maybe be more proactive in getting this type of treatment is, what happens actually when you go into your office or virtual office and have EMDR therapy. Maybe if you could walk us through what's the EMDR process look like? Like, how does it start? Like, what actually happens? That would be kind of interesting, I think, for a lot of people to hear and probably ultimately helpful.
Absolutely. So the EMDR process, I think one thing that differentiates EMDR from regular talk therapy is how structured it actually is. There are 8 total phases that are sort of interchangeable, and we go back and forth. Like Luna mentioned, we may start desensitizing and go back into preparation, but just to go through them relatively quickly so that your listeners can get an understanding of the full picture of EMDR. Initially, we take a history. We get an understanding of what the client is coming for and what their needs are. And then we go into what's called preparation phase, which is helping their nervous system adapt and manage within a window of tolerance during the divorce, after the divorce, years after the trauma. So figuring out ways that they can institute day-to-day coping skills. And that may include some of those EMDR resourcing procedures like tapping in positive feelings, positive state, so that they can continue to enhance their state of being. After the preparation phase, we get into assessment, where we begin to really look at specifically what memories or experiences are we going to target with our EMDR initially. And then once we have identified a target summary, a list of what we're going to be working on, we start with the desensitization phase. And that is sort of the most talked about phase of EMDR, because that is where the eye movements come in or the tapping comes in, and we're focusing on a difficult target memory and the emotions, as well as the physiological responses a person has to that target memory. And then we ask them how distressing that is to them in that moment. So we're not judging the actual event, we're judging how distressing it is to that person. And we go through a series of eye movements, taking breaks every so often, and the client will come back to us and sort of report a new thought that came up, a new emotion that came up. And based on the adaptive information processing model, we trust that the client's brain is going to sort of recenter to the most adaptive way. So if they created negative core beliefs of I'm not good enough or I have to tolerate this, they're going to actually be free from that once they're done with that EMDR desensitizing and reprocessing. So after the desensitizing phase, we then install a positive cognition that they have come up with on their own. It's a beautiful thing to experience, to see the adaptive information processing system occur within a client. And then once we've installed that positive cognition, we then complete a body scan, because as we all know, trauma, difficult experiences are stored physically in our body. That's where headaches come from. That's where autoimmune issues come from, chronic pain, right? So we do the body scan and clear that. And then there's a closure. So at the end of every EMDR session, we make sure that the client is, again, back in their window of tolerance, stabilized, and feeling present again. And we do that at the end of every session. And then when we return for the following session, we start with a reevaluation. We were working on this memory last week. How distressing is it to you today? And we sort of repeat that process again until that is cleared. So that is the 8 phases of EMDR.
So with these 8 phases, I think a lot of people, or at least I'm thinking this, say my feeling is I want to get this EMDR therapy because I still think of that hot stove that I touched as a kid. For me, actually, I licked a hot pan. My mom told me not to do it, and I licked it, and boy, I'll never do that again. She was right. I think that's still affecting me. Obviously, more serious example would be usually what prompts this stuff. I come to y'all to get this type of treatment. How many sessions does it usually take before we're getting into the part where I might start feeling better? I mean, I know it probably depends on the person and everything going on, but these 8 phases, like how soon do you get to like actually work on fixing the issue?
So with the 8 phases, in terms of the length of time you start to see results, as soon as the client enters the room, we're doing resourcing to manage that nervous system. So they may leave with a new resource where they can manage some stressors, manage intrusive thoughts, manage the anxiety of going through a divorce after the first session.
Yeah.
Typically, the rule of thumb is certainly for a single incident trauma, I believe it's 6 to 8 sessions of EMDR, and you can see dramatic results for single incident trauma. With a situation of a toxic or abusive relationship, a divorce, those are multiple experiences of trauma that may take a little longer.
Is there such a thing for like intensives in this area to where it's a longer batch? Like, is that ever applied with this modality of treatment?
I want to say a few things, if it's okay, too. One, some people come into EMDR hearing that it's really fast and they expect results to happen really quickly. And on single event trauma, Nina was saying, 6 to 8 sessions, 6 to 10 sessions, normally people can get rid of fear of height, fear of flying, fear of dogs. A lot of the phobias are like considered single event trauma, even if there were multiple events. They're like easier to target because there's not like all this, right? The iceberg analogy that people use, right? It's not like tons of things below the surface. It is what it is. It's this fear of blah. We address that, we clear that, and people are like amazed on how effective it is. With people that have more complex cases, right? There's, especially if, right, it wasn't just this abusive relationship, for example, there was also prior abusive relationship or childhood abuse, neglect, domestic abuse situation. There's so much things going on that it's going to be much harder to target. It's going to be faster than other modalities, especially talk therapy. The results are going to be more efficient, and it's going to be faster than other modalities, but it's not going to be fast per se. Especially if it's complex enough, we want to spend time in resource development. Sometimes we have clients that come in and say, I just want you to do this thing that I heard about, and let's, help me get better. And we want to help people get better. But like one of my mentors, Robin Shapiro, says, the slower you go, the faster you get there, because we don't want to re-traumatize people. And to your question, as far as like, is there an option to do intensives for this? So we are mostly an insurance-based practice. So we have to operate under the insurance regulations of the 53 minutes or so. Sometimes we can offer twice a week if necessary, but we are managing to offer EMDR therapy successfully to clients within that time frame, even though EMDR is recommended to do over 1.5 hours normally for a session. We do have the options to offer intensives as well for people who have complex cases and they're able to afford, because it's not something that insurance covers. It will be a self-pay option. They can do it at an intensive. I've done several intensives already, and it's amazing what you can do with 5 hours of EMDR therapy, because you don't have to constantly kind of like open the subconscious, open, close. You're just like diving in and really figuring out what needs to be cleaned up, what needs to be reprocessed, and you can get much more results due to that.
Oh, that's really helpful. And I mean, I know we'll about your a little bit here eventually in further detail, but I mean, I'll just say for any of the people listening to this, oftentimes, what I experience as a practitioner referring people out for mental health treatment is there are not that many options of like truly great practitioners that do accept the most common insurances. And one of the things that really is great about Luna and Nina's practice, Helping Moon Counseling, is and it definitely make it more of a more affordable way to go. So keep that in mind for anybody that's listening to this and the thought is creeping in, well, this sounds good. How much does it cost? Well, you're maybe able to pay for it. And if you're definitely think of Luna's practice. For somebody that's hearing about this and maybe this thing that they're trying to undo, this trauma, be it that of the relationship or back, is a lot more traumatic than Chris here licking a hot stove when he was a little boy. I could imagine some people might be worried how they react when this EMDR therapy starts. Like, I go in for this 53 minutes, when done, like, can I go about the rest of my day? Like, how does it affect people?
So it definitely affects people differently. And I'll let Nina touch on that as well. But, we're all different. We all have different capacity to dissociate to a certain degree, right? To take what's happening right now to me. And then if I have to see a client, I'm going to, wrap up whatever is going on with me, and I'm going to be able to go see a client. A lot of people in many different first responders places, or really any professional setting, right? Like, you have the ability to take whatever is happening to you and just put it aside for a moment so you can show up for your clients, for your students, for your whatever it is, your patients. So it's the same thing here. So that's why EMDR is built in such a way that we really assess each client's capacity to regulate at the end of session. So for some of my clients, I would only leave about 5 minutes for closure. For some of my clients, I knew that I had to leave 10 or even 15 minutes out of our session time for closure, meaning for us to check in, see how they're doing, maybe engage in an exercise. When we had a physical office, we actually also allowed some people to sit in an office if they needed some extra time to regulate. Now that we're in a virtual space, I always tell my clients, if you feel like even at the end of session you need a little bit more time to ground, just make sure don't open your door, don't go out to continue with what you have to do. Spend some time to regulate yourself so you can continue. For others, they're able to literally finish the session and just off they go as if it didn't happen, right? With EMDR, though, it's important to remember, and we tell this to clients, is that we reprocess in session, but really the brain has the capacity to continue processing information for about 2 to 3 days after the session. So even though they're not actively doing anything, their subconscious is, right, we did some recall, and we know that whenever we do recall in the brain, there's this capacity to rearrange stuff or erase the chalkboard, like Nina said. So they might continue doing some of the work, and it might be a good idea for them to continue doing this work as long as they're able to regulate. But that's why we teach them a lot of skills, if it is a container exercise, if it is a safe state exercise, or many other things. So if they feel like they need some extra, even after, let's say they left the session, they're okay, but then a day after or that night, something is coming up to their memory and they need to regulate, they have some tools to do that. And we don't go too deep before we have enough resources for them. Nina, would you like to add anything?
Yes, thank you so much, Luna. So in terms of, clients feeling nervous about coming forth to access therapy with trauma, it can be a very delicate and difficult thing to come and even just speak about trauma. So as Luna mentioned, we do a lot of preparation work, but a big component of EMDR for the therapist is knowing your client and making sure they remain within what's called a window of tolerance.
Okay.
So we have a regulated nervous system state where we're connected to, we're connected right now in this podcast. And sometimes we can get what's called hyper aroused. So that might be anxious, stress, our heart, rate rises, etc., or we can get hypo aroused. And that is what Luna touched on in terms of the dissociative quality, right? We start to shut down. So being aware of indicators from your client that they are hyper or hypo, and then managing that with these resources that we put in place almost immediately. If I possibly can, my first session with a client, I'm container, I'm in some sort of peaceful place so that they can learn to regulate themselves through these traumatic memories and re-experiencing.
And actually, I want to add one more thing, if that's okay. One of the beautiful things about EMDR is that you don't necessarily have to talk about it, meaning you don't have to give me a lot of details. I work a lot with first responders, and a lot of the times they really don't like talking, or veterans, they don't want to give you the details of what happened. What we want with EMDR, we kind of ask for the ESPN highlights, right? That they give you during a summary of a game or whatever. That's what we kind of want from clients. And then when we go into desensitization, they can share as much or as little as possible. They don't have to give us the details. What's important is that they're going through it in their brain. And that's what's so empowering about EMDR, is that we are not really doing a lot per se during the desensitization. We're just holding that space for them to help them do the work themselves.
And maybe if that first responder out there listening to this, and you can hit a nerve with me on that. My dad came from a career in law enforcement, later master's degree with a thesis on PTSD and policing. And so I personally, a lot of people that are really through that. But for that rough guy or gal out there that's listening to this, they're like, I don't want to sit in a therapist's office, do all that tree hugging bull crap, whatever.
Yeah.
I want something that helps me. Maybe speak to that person. Like, how is this? How soon can they get results? Why should they think about entertaining therapy for the first time to help them with this stuff?
At the end of the day, with trauma, it's up, right? I can even go through life, right? If we take back the example of the kid who touched the stove, they would probably not come into therapy saying like, oh, I want to work on this memory of me touching the stove when I was 5 and my mom said this and to me. They're most likely going to come in with some depression and some anxiety or low self-esteem, not really knowing where it came from, but really just going through life feeling a certain type of way about themselves. With first responders, they have to run toward everybody else is running away from. They have to run toward it, and they do it for a long time continuously. And sometimes what happens is that they don't end up taking care of themselves because they don't have time to, right? They feel like they don't have time to do that. They have to show up for their team. They have to show up for their families. They have to show up for everybody else. They are, by essence, caretakers. So by doing all of that, sometimes they're not noticing some of the challenges they're having. If it is difficulty sleeping, if it is being hyper aroused or aroused, they can either finish their shift and go and just sleep for the rest of the 3 days off that they have, or they may actually go do some extreme stuff and be hyper active in what they're doing. Everybody, again, responds differently. But with EMDR, we are able to offer them this, again, grounding, right? The ability to go through whatever they're experiencing, because we can take away the memories. We don't delete memories by doing EMDR, but we're able to desensitize some of the trauma piece of it. There's still terrible things that happen that they're exposed to, but hopefully we can take the edge from them and unlink anything that is unhealthy, that is making it difficult for them. Maybe they felt like, they didn't do the right thing. Maybe they felt like the they made wasn't the right decision, and maybe they could have saved this person who wasn't saved, right? So a lot of those things have to be targeted. Every first responder I've ever met has like this, in addition to all the many different memories they have like this one incident that they like, it's the incident, right? That they can forget, that they experience in their service. And by just targeting that, it gives them the ability to continue doing the job that they love and to continue to serve in the way they want to without getting to this negative habits of possibly drinking, issues in relationship, because a lot of the times they want to protect their partners so they don't open up about it. And that could create a lot of conflict in a relationship, like I'm sure you know as a divorce lawyer.
Well, I think if there's a soundbite for what we're doing, that be it, what you just said there. So I hope everybody is taking note of all of this stuff. So maybe let's shift a little bit to the context of what I deal with mostly, and say a person, usually for me it's a female, and they're in divorce. They're still in the process of leaving a difficult partner. Maybe it's on the radar of something that they know that they're going to need to confront. Can EMDR be helpful for that person as they're getting ready to navigate through what can seem like at times an overwhelming process of leaving a long-term relationship?
Absolutely. I think that for a person who's going through the process of divorce or even thinking about it, they're in the midst of all of it, reassessing their relationship. Maybe they're finally picking up on some things that they've, knew they were there all along, but didn't really think to do something about it. Therapy in general can be a really good place to have somebody objectively be there for you, help you think about what you're going through and reassess what it is you're looking for. Through going through a divorce or the process of preparing for that, you can feel on edge, you can feel anxious, you can feel maybe low self-esteem, right? A lot of people feel like, oh, if I did commit to a relationship, it's supposed to be forever and ever, and I'm failing if I'm not able to do that, right? Like that's why a lot of people stay married, I think sometimes even longer than they should, right? They do it for the kids, they do it because they don't want to feel like they're failing. They may feel guilt and shame about that, right? Like, what am I going to do to my kids if I leave my partner? That's a very difficult thing to do. They may be even some issues with relaxing or sleeping. So by going to do EMDR, you can again, learn some tools to help you regulate. And then at the end of the day, when our brain is in this hyper arousal state, when we're trying to think, our ability to think is lowered. I do couples therapy through the Gottman method, and they teach you, and they actually encourage the therapist to purchase those oximeters, I think it's called, right? Those heartbeat monitors that they give you at the hospital that they put on your finger. And the reason they do that...
That's the Gottman method. It's all Hartman.
They tell you to do that because it's programmed so when it reaches 100 beats per minute, it beeps. And the reason they do that is because they say, the research that they have discovered is that once the heart rate is above 100 beats per minute, it means that your ability to really process information, that's it. You lost the capacity. And that's why when people fight, they may say to each other, "You're not even hearing me." Because they're not, right? They are hearing the information, but not really able to process the information. So again, it's like giving you the ability to more clearly, to feel more grounded, to be able to really look at the situation from an adaptive way, from a clear understanding of what's happening versus from a trauma response. So if it is initially just giving you some tools to regulate, that's what we would do. But if you're ready to go deeper and go into some of the memory reprocessing, you will be able to see things clearer and not through all those negative core beliefs you may have developed along the way.
So, I guess I'll ask you about something. So I had opportunity to speak with a client of mine that had long since finished her divorce. Turned out her son went to college and was actually considering law school. So it was kind of cool to talk to her after a couple years. It was a long, drawn out divorce. But then she's like, "Oh, do you mind if I tell you a couple things about when we were working together? Maybe it helps you help other people." And I'm like, "Of course, please." And she asked if I remembered this one particular day to where I had to end the phone call, and it was the only time I really had this interaction with her. And I think I had probably said something like, something's not right today. You're clearly upset. I don't think this is sinking in. I'm going to call you tomorrow and we'll continue this conversation because this is not productive. It was like one of those phone calls. And she said, "Do you remember that?" And I said, "Well, yes, I sure do." And she said, "Do you want to know what prompted that?" And I said, "Well, yeah. I said, it really doesn't matter at this point, but sure, I'd love to hear it." And she said, "What I realized afterwards is, in that moment," and she said, "there was a couple others during the divorce process." She said, "I got a reminder of something that led me to a bad situation with my husband." And in her situation, fortunately, her husband, I don't know if I remember if I had something to do with it, but he moved out of the house before the divorce really started. But she told me when they were married, something that really made her nervous was she would hear the garage door opening as he was coming home. And in her mind, it'd be like, maybe bleep this out, but we can re-recording. She's like, "Oh shit, here it goes again. He's back." And I guess the day that I was talking to her, I think her son had the garage door opener and she hears the garage, and she was explaining this to me later. She's like, "This sounds ridiculous to you," but she said it was just a trigger. And she said, I could also get a text message from him talking to me in a certain way that was the way he would be, talk down to me during the marriage. And it would also, trigger me. And it's just, it was interesting to hear, but I'm wondering if this is the type of thing, I know you say this EMDR therapy can get to the deep, super rooted stuff, but it can also help with maybe triggers of situational anxiety when somebody's going through something hard, maybe like a divorce or a first responder when they hear the gunshot or the lights. Does this EMDR therapy, can it get at that type of stuff too?
Yeah, absolutely. EMDR can really target, like I said, the components of the memory. So I mentioned before, maybe this computer mouse can be part of my memory. So for example, let's say, God forbid, something terrible happened to me right now at this moment, and my brain, my eyes picked up on the mouse. Now, that happened, it finished, I moved on with my life. Kind of I have pretty good coping skill, pretty good ability to move forward. I moved on with my life, and then one day I'm sitting somewhere and my eyes picks up on a very similar mouse, and all of a sudden I am breathing heavily. My heartbeat feels like it's going to get out of my chest. I don't know what's happening, but I'm feeling totally overwhelmed and I don't know what was happening. And I will go on with my day. And mind you, if I picked up on something at that moment, let's say this pencil, I picked up on that as I was going through that new experience. Now, if we look at a memory network as the core of what happened, and now I have the mouse, and now the few months later, it happened to me, I got triggered, and now the pencil is, so this is all part of it. Even though they're not linked to each other, it's all part of it. Now it's all triggering. Through EMDR, we're able to recognize if there's anything that is linked in a way and desensitize that impact. So for the example that you gave about this woman who got triggered with the garage door sound opening, we could have targeted right away. Like if she would have said that to me in a session, I would say, okay, let's go ahead, identify what is the feeling that comes with that, or what is the negative core belief that comes with that, and what is the positive belief. We're go through those 7 magic questions that we ask during target assessment, and we're going to target whatever it is that is causing that feeling, and we're going to identify how disturbing it is, and we're going to go through all the phase 3 assessment to just target that and desensitize it completely. It's pretty cool when we get to do that, when we get to see how that works pretty efficiently. Nina, would you like to add anything?
I think you explained it very well in terms of triggers, but just stepping back even more, Chris, I mean, what you described there is a re-experiencing, right? That's a traumatic re-experiencing that is a part of post-traumatic stress disorder. And that is really where EMDR was born. So being able to not only address the memory of perhaps, or the memories of this abusive husband, but all the little triggers related to it, the garage door, yelling, the time of day, even hearing him come through the front door or whatever. So certainly, and it's again, through that 8-phase protocol. So it's very structured. And I think what might help clients feel safe about the process of EMDR is that it is so structured, so they know what to expect. So often in talk therapy, it's you're showing up, how you feeling today? There's not a clear way forward. But EMDR, they know exactly what's going to happen and what we're doing next, because they helped create the whole target summary.
So in terms of like the actual EMDR session, as I understand it, it's physical components, so to speak, with the eye movement or tapping or things of that nature. I know that your practice is unique and that it's mostly virtual. How does this work virtually?
Same way, in a way. We use eye movement either through, there's many different platforms online that have like a dot that goes on the screen back and forth, or I use sometimes like just self-directed eye movement, having the client right to left with their hands pulled up or looking at the corners of the room, or they can even tap on sticky notes in front of them and follow their eyes as they're tapping. They actually even have tappers that are virtual that you can purchase, and you can have the client purchase, and you have control from it, from your own screen. I mean, a lot of it's developed during COVID, right? Because of everything that happened. Things that didn't exist before. You can even have bilateral music. I even use the old metronome. Remember what a metronome is? I have one that I use sometimes because it does that sound of tuck, 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 right? So it has the bilateral sound. There's really so many different ways of actually implementing that BLS, the bilateral stimulation. The majority of the research has been done about eye movements, and that's why it's recommended to do eye movements. But I can tell you from personal experience that I've used tappers, the buzzers for years, and it was very effective. So it's really more about figuring out what works for the client the best way, and then applying that according to the client's needs.
Makes sense. And do you all find any main misconceptions about EMDR therapy? And, if so, I mean, maybe speak to those things so people can be more comfortable with this. It sounds like a great way to get help with a vast array of just practical things that can then hold us all back in life.
Yeah, Googled a little bit of what are some of the myths about EMDR, in addition to some of the things that I knew, because I was curious, like what is going to come up as I Googled that. And, one of the things that I always hear about is what I said in the beginning, right? This is going to be really fast. And sometimes even therapists do a disservice to us EMDR therapists, because they send their clients and say, oh, just go see Luna for like 6 to 8 sessions and you'll be good to go. And no, that's not true. Okay. Like I said before, it's faster than other modalities modalities, but it's not fast per se. So it all depends on the complexity of the case. So that's something very, very important. The other thing is that everybody thinks EMDR is just that, right? It's all the eye movement. And especially because literally, I think almost show I've seen in the past year on Netflix or Hulu has had a component of EMDR. And it's like portrayed pretty poorly in terms of the phase work. Like people say like, oh, I had this, and that just goes right into, okay, just notice that right now, without preparation, without explaining anything, right? So they come in thinking, if I'm not doing this, then we're not doing EMDR. So what I teach, and I know Nina does that to our consultees a lot of the times, is just getting comfortable with telling clients that even when we're not doing this, we are doing EMDR. Because EMDR is an evidence-based approach that has 8 phases that we have to follow to make sure that you're going to get that long-lasting, what we call trait change, right? So we talked in the beginning about a state change. I'm going to do an exercise. I'm going to change the way I'm feeling from I'm really anxious to I'm feeling good right now. And with EMDR, we do what we call a trait change. So I am not good enough can totally go away, right? I'm not going to feel like that anymore. I'm able to really change the way somebody feels about themselves, look at themselves, how they view themselves in the world. Some other things that I found is that you have to relieve every detail and it's going to re-traumatize you.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of people get worried about.
Mm-hmm. And listen, I worked with the survivors of the Parkland shooting in 2018. I worked with a lot of them. And unfortunately, I did have to treat some clients that did get re-traumatized by some therapists who were doing EMDR without fidelity to the model. So, right, like just like in your field, I'm sure that there are some lawyers who are doing things not really the proper way and can cause some damage. Sadly, it's also in the therapy field, right? There's people who are going to take this and they're going to use it without fidelity, and they're going to go too quickly into the material. They're going to get too quickly to try to desensitize, and many times with the hopes and the of making somebody feel better. The intention is not bad, but if you try to go too quickly, that's when you may re-traumatize a person. That's why you have to take your time. So I tell my clients, if I'm taking my time with you, it's because I want to make sure you're going to get the best results out of it. Because if we go too quickly into desensitization and you will get re-traumatized and then destabilized, it's going to take us way more time to get on that wagon again to continue the process. So I think that it's really important that when you talk to people there's so many EMDR trained people, okay? Like I volunteer, I'm now in a trainer track myself.
Like who knows what they're doing besides helping moon counseling, which I would just call there. But like, how do you know if somebody really has the training in this stuff?
So I'm going to be, some people may not like my answer, but I'm going to go for it anyway.
Those are always the most fun.
Yeah, because to me, if somebody took the time to invest in consultation, and they don't have to even necessarily be certified, but they have to be going through the process of certification, that shows me that they have invested additional time to really make sure they're doing things properly and they're getting the guidance to do that properly. Because EMDR is a complex, comprehensive approach. So there's a lot of components to it. You get loaded with so much information. It's totally normal to forget some pieces, to miss something along the way. And that's why it's built the way it is, right? You do the training, then you're not even considered trained until you got 10 hours of consultation post your training. That's how it's built. So it's 40 hours of training, which is half didactic, they teach you, and then half practicum. And then you do 10 hours of consultation post the training to be considered trained. So that's the basic. But even after those 10 hours, most people feel like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm not really fully sure I'm doing this right, but they're either doing it through getting that additional consultation towards certification, which is basically 20 more hours of consultation. You really get an opportunity to look into some of your own patterns, some of the new things that come up, right? Every person has their own memory network, their own coping skills. So you have to kind of like adapt to what's coming in. So to me, that's a big piece of thing. Like how much training is somebody getting? How much do they just go and get that training for 5 days or 2 weekends and that's it, and they're doing one EMDR client a week, or are they really immersed in doing this? So that's part of the questions people should ask, like, when did you get trained? Are you working towards certification? Have you gotten any additional trainings? How many clients of EMDR are you seeing a week? That's an important question. If somebody says, I'm seeing one client a week for EMDR, I would probably want somebody else. That would be me. Again, everybody has to gain their experience, but that's part of what I see as a consultant, as a trainer in the making, that it's just really important to make sure that people have more support through this process, because then they're more likely to do it with fidelity to the model. Nina is actually one of my consultants in trainings too. She's becoming an approved consultant with EMDR. Nina, do you have anything to add to that? Or if you object to what I say, you're welcome to say so.
I appreciate what you brought up, Luna, in terms of ongoing education. Even as a consultant in training, I spend many hours a week making sure that I know what I'm doing and learning the new things, making sure I'm up to date with trainings and related to EMDR and related to therapy in general. So I think it's important, that educational piece for all therapists, to continue. And, there are some credentialing affiliations like EMDRIA, for example, so EMDR International Association. Being a part of that, I think, is a bit of a credential for a therapist to show that they are interested in ongoing education and fidelity of practice. And then within that, you can also look up if your therapist is certified or consultant in training, or consultant, or like Luna, an EMDR trainer.
Yeah, they have a directory on the EMDR website. They have a directory. So I would always say, if you want to pick an EMDR therapist, go there. That could be a good place for you to check the level of expertise, the level of experience of people based on what's on that directory.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds kind of similar to, the practice of law. Okay, we all have lawyers have a license in an area to be a lawyer, but I'm a divorce lawyer. If somebody slipped up and was got a DUI, I wouldn't really know what I'm doing to go get them out of jail. It's just like one of those areas where really having a specialist makes a lot of difference, especially with the trauma and stuff that sometimes you might be unlocking and trying to erase through this, modality of treatment.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a shout out to you. I've worked with different divorce and family law practitioners. There's a huge difference between working with somebody who really cares and have a good intention to help people versus I've seen too many. Not for nothing, there's a bad name in the industry for like all they want is money, right? They want people to fight. They want to drain people from their money and all that kind of stuff, which exists there. It definitely exists. So they're not doing the best service for their client. They're doing the best service for their pockets, let's say. Right? And with you, that's why I right away when I met you and we started working together and referring to one another, I felt so comfortable to refer people to your firm, because I knew that they're going to get really somebody cares and somebody who really wants to get the best for the client. And of course you can make money in the process. That's okay. And totally valid, right? You're working for your money, but always your clients, really, you care about them. You always made sure that they can get support if they're open to it. And I love that about your practice. It's just, you stand out because of that.
Well, thank you. It's nice to hear nice things. And on the note of practices, Helping Moon counseling, tell me about it. We know it's there's practitioners who work in the EMDR approach, but you all do a lot of other things, often covered by insurance. For the people listening to this in Florida, how can you help people?
Yeah, so Helping Moon Counseling is going to celebrate 10 years in October, which is amazing. I know, it's crazy. It started as a solo practice. I was the only practitioner. And with time, I started my thing that I promised myself when I got into private practice is that no matter what, I'm going to call people back. So, I'm sure even if at the end of freaking 12-hour day, if I had 12 messages, I would call every person. Even if I didn't have an opening, it would be, I'm sorry, I'm not open, but here are 3 people who might be able to help you. So that was my thing. Like, I didn't want people who tried to call me to ever be left with, oh, this person never called me back. So for a period of time, I kept on doing that. And I would finish my long day and then we're out. So then eventually I was like, okay, maybe it's time to hire somebody. And that's, by people ask me sometimes, oh, what was your business plan? Non-existent business plan. It was just supply and demand kind of thing. And my husband chippering in the background. I'm going to take that away from him. He's the business person. So, now we have a practice of 24 clinicians and 4 to 5 student interns that I'm super proud of. The majority of our team is EMDR trained and either certified or working towards certification with Nina or myself. We do offer very low cost to our team for certification because we encourage that. I also offer specialized training throughout the year too, because again, we believe in that educational growth. We're mostly insurance-based. Of course, we can offer some self-pay rate as well, but mostly insurance-based. We accept almost all major insurances, including Medicaid and Medicare, and we're fully virtual. And we also have the student interns who offer free support groups. We started that during COVID, and it's been existent since then. We have one for women who are 55 and over, one for women who are between 20 to 40, and then we also have an insurance-based, self-pay-based group for disordered eating that is led by one of our therapists. And really, between all the therapists that we have, we can serve all ages, almost all conditions. And if it's not something that we feel like we specialize in, we have a really wide network of support that we refer out. We believe in getting the best care for our clients. Anybody who calls us, if we can accommodate the best care for them, we'll refer out to make sure that they get what they need.
If somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, hey, I can be helped by Helping Moon, Luna and Nina, how do they start the process?
They can either call or text our main number, 561-571-1557. Christina, our admin, is amazing. She's super nice and kind. And also our billing person, Michelle, sometimes she will pick up the phone. She's amazing as well. They can call or text our main number. We also have a WhatsApp call number too. People can chat there. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. People can reach out to us there. And of course, our website, www.helpingmoon.com. There's a contact form. They can reach us there as well.
Perfect. And you can work with anybody. Is it located inside of Florida? Is that how it works these days with the practice?
Yeah, anybody who's in Florida, we can work with. If they go out of state, we have to pause services until they come back, unless the clinician, for example, Nina is licensed in Georgia. So if a client of hers goes to vacation on Georgia, she can still see him because she's licensed in the state of Florida. But for the most part, we have to be licensed in the state the client is at. The counseling compact is coming in actually these days, so we might have more flexibility with that now.
Finally, one day?
No, it is. It's happening. It's finally actually happening.
Wow.
All the legislation and the lobbying has worked, and they're finally putting into effect. I think it's happening next month, if I'm not mistaken. It's actually happening, and people, practitioners can start going into that process. You just have to pay fees for every state, but you don't have to go. Yeah, of course, there's a commitment that if you want, you can even get approval to work in all states, but there's a fee per state that you have to pay yearly to do that. But at least the process is not like that you have to take additional classes or get additional licensure. It's just an application fee, and then you can do that, which will be nice, especially if you have a client that goes, to vacation for a month or two, and in the past they had to pause services. Now they won't have to. So it's a nice thing.
So if you could share one thing with our listeners to remember about EMDR therapy, what would it be?
I would say that if you felt at a point or right now in your life that you are stuck, or that you're not living your full potential, or that you're just depressed or anxious and you don't know why, EMDR can make that change for you. And you can live your best life. It's just a matter of making that decision to reach out, get help, and you can be on the other side of it. And I'm fortunate and blessed that I have gotten to see that ability for people, right? The cocoon to a butterfly process that you go through. And it's the most beautiful gift that I can ever get. To see people's process is beautiful. So if people want to live their best life, they need to get help. And EMDR, to me, is the best and most efficient way to do so.
Well, I got one more question, if you can entertain one more answer. And this maybe goes out to most of my clients. If there's one piece of encouragement that you could share with somebody listening right now that's, contemplating or going through a relationship breakup or divorce, what would it be?
I think that people sometimes come to terms with this is how my life is, this is how it's going to be, and it's not going to change. And I want to tell people that it's not true, that your reality can be what you want it to be. And I think that sometimes it feels like a cliche, dreams do come true, or, you be the change you want to see in the world. It sounds like a cliche, but it's not. It's the reality. Like, I came from a very childhood, very challenging household of domestic abuse, and I could have turned out very differently from how I turned out. And of course, it's a lot. There was some people along the way that'll help me, but a lot of it was just really reaching out for help and getting the help that I needed. So I just want to give people hope that even if you had the worst experiences in your life, you can come out on the other side, and EMDR can definitely be one of those ways to get there. So some of the most successful people in the world, if you look around, have had some really difficult experiences in their life, and it's just a matter of how you take it and make it into your strength versus your weakness.
Well, I couldn't think of a better quote to end on. Luna, Nina, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you being part of this interview here today.
Thank you for having us. I really appreciate you and everything you do for your community.
Yes, thank you so much.